Thanks to our sponsors, Hit Point Press. Check out their Big Bad Bundles, link in the description below. Alright guys, Jameson and Alex here. Today we're going to be talking about the race and background changes for the newest Unearthed Arcana for the ONE D&D / 5.5e next version, future of D&D, whatever you want to call it. That was just recently released. We will have a lot of thoughts about the specific changes.
If you're wondering why we tied these two together is because of very one specific reason, which we will cover.
So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to be entered in our D&D Beyond Players Bundle giveaway.
Which is now more valuable than ever.
Absolutely.
Since now Wizard of the Coast has acquired D&D Beyond, and they are clearly leaning into doing the physical and digital book bundles and things like that.
Yes.
That little free giveaway becomes more and more valuable every day. To try to help keep this as concise as possible, which is not something we excel at, if you've been watching our channel for a while, going over the races, we're going to be going over what's different, what's new. So if you hear us just skip over something, that's going to mean that it's still the same as it was before.
Sure.
So starting off with the most generic thing possible, us peoples. So they basically took what was the variant human and made it the regular human to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But the number one thing to keep in mind, and why we tied backgrounds in with this, is that stat increases are no longer coming from your race. They're coming from your background. The reason they give for that is that your background is what you're doing, what you've been doing. Mm-hmm. You spend your time, your efforts, your growing up years, your development years doing stuff. You're going to be better at that than someone else of your race would necessarily be. Your race still have abilities, things like that fit your lineage, your bloodline, your culture, all that kind of stuff. But your specific skill sets, that will be different based on what you spent your time doing, which makes sense. If my career is doing something, I have expertise in that, whereas James is doing something different, he has expertise in that. It makes sense. Exactly. So you have one skill proficiency as a human, and you gain the skilled feat or another first level feat. Specifically, that we mentioned that on their first level feat because feats have levels now. We will have a whole separate video, as you will notice with all this UA stuff. We're trying to break it up into mini videos, so it's not 4 hours long on one discussion.
Right.
And you will also gain inspiration when you finish a long rest. Oh, we've also covered that in our rules thing.
Yes.
To where inspiration is not bardic inspiration. This is basically anytime you would roll a natural 20 on a D20 test, which is a attack roll, ability check, saving throw. More rules changes. You give yourself inspiration, which is basically a set-aside advantage you can choose to use whenever you would like. You can only have one at a time. If you have inspiration already and you gain it again, you can give it to someone else in your party that doesn't have an inspiration. So, humans, that is what is new and different.
Yes. Yeah, so like Alex said, it's really just a twist to the variant human. Is just humans now.
You're still getting a feat. It's just a first level feat specifically.
Yeah, and you just start off the day with basically one reroll. Or one advantage, I should say.
Yep.
All right. Next on here, we have a new race, which is the Ardling, which the best way to explain this is they're kind of cousins to the Aasimar, as Jeremy Crawford mentions in the long-form interview. With that, they kind of get the visage of an animal, so think, Egyptian gods or whatever.
That's the first thing that popped into my head.
Humanish, like humanoid body, and then just your head or face is a different animal.
Cat, bird, pig, bat, whatever. Yeah.
So there is that. And then kind of similar to the Tiefling that we've seen in the past with different types of lineages, which, or as they are called here, celestial legacies, as these are celestial beings. You get 3 different options on here, and this is something we see a couple times, which we will see here in the next few races as well. Instead of having these sub-races specifically, you're getting different lineages, which they might have one ability based on the race, that instead, if you have a different lineage, you're going to get a slightly different ability that goes along with those.
Different variation of the same thing.
So with the Ardling on here, and as Jeremy Crawford mentions, this is one of the first Player's Handbook race to have any kind of flying in it. There was the Aarakocra, but that was added later on. It wasn't in the Player's Handbook, which is the base go-to rules book. So with the updated Player's Handbook, we have the Ardlings, 30-foot movement speed, 200-year life, angelic flight as a bonus action, sprout spectral wings, and you can fly up to a number of movement speed. If you're in the air at the end of the movement, you fall if nothing is holding you aloft. And you can use the bonus action equal to your proficiency bonus per long rest. So you get a kind of pseudo fly. It's not quite a jump. It's not like a super jump, which I've seen some people try to relate it to, because you can move. You can't. If you're jumping, you can jump in a straight line.
Right. Yeah.
So with the flight,
it's a maneuverable jump.
Right.
Yeah. Basically.
And then depending on the celestial legacy you pick, which you get to choose one of three, which is exalted, associated with the chaotic good, heavenly, associated with lawful good, or idyllic, associated with the neutral good. You also gain the initial benefit of the legacy, which is a cantrip that you learn. You also choose the animal you resemble, as we mentioned. And then at the 3rd level and 5th level up, you gain the ability to cast a higher level spell with the trait, as shown on the table, which we'll put up on the screen. And then you can't cast it again with the feature until you finish a long rest, but you can cast a spell with spell slots you have if you have spell slots. And then you choose Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma as your spellcasting ability for that. And then lastly, you gain resistance to radiant damage. So depending on which legacy you pick, you're going to get different access to different spells that go along with that. And we will see that here
a couple more times.
A few more times, for sure.
Next up would be my area with the Dragonborn. First major change is all breath weapons are now 15-foot cones. Some were 30-foot lines, and some were 15-foot cones. Now everything is 15-foot cones. The saving throw is now based on dexterity instead of constitution. And you have proficiency bonus uses per long rest. It used to be just once per short or long rest, so that's scaled up that way as well, so you get more uses over the course of the day.
And the DC is your constitution modifier, which is, I believe, the same, but just
important to specify. Right, that is that way. The damage is also changed to 1d10 plus your character level. So, much more, I guess, higher floor as you level up. And they finally gave Dragonborns Dark Vision innately, which is fascinating. They did not have in the PHP. But they finally got to get that, which is a very welcome addition.
Then we have the Dwarf, which gets a few new things on here, which we have, as usual, Dark Vision, your Dwarven Resilience, still there, Dwarven Toughness. What you might initially think on here is Hill Dwarf, Mountain Dwarf, all those different kinds of dwarfs have been consolidated into a dwarf.
It's just a dwarf.
So that's why you kind of have those similarities on there. Mm-hmm. And then on top of this, we get Forge-wise, which Divine Creator gives you tool proficiency with 2 of the following options: Jewelers, Masons, Smiths, or Tinker's tools.
It used to be just 1. Now it's 2.
You get those 2. And Stone Cunning, which is completely new, which is as a bonus action, you gain Tremor Sense with a range of 60 feet for 10 minutes. You must be on a stone surface or touching such a surface to use the Tremor Sense. The stone can be natural or worked, and you can use the bonus action number of times equal to proficiency bonus, gaining all uses back on a long rest. So that's another one of the things they wanted to specify and stress, is giving some more options, utility, or action or bonus action uses to give an extra ability to a lot of these classes. Now, I know the humans didn't really get that per se, but they do get the extra...
They get extra feet still.
On there, which can now have some extra actionable uses as well.
Elves next up still have Dark Vision, still have the Fey Ancestry, Keen Senses, and Trance. None of that's changing. The only difference for Elves is the Elvish lineages with Drow, High Elf, and Wood Elf. So each of them are going to be getting spells, just like the Ardlings did, and another one that will come down the road here. But Drow specifically will get 120 feet of dark vision as opposed to 60 feet, so they can see into oblivion when in the dark. The Dancing Lights cantrip, along with Fairy Fire and Darkness spells. And just like the Ardling, you can cast them once per free for day, once per day for free. You'll be getting my modifiers right there. I did catch that. But if you have spell slots, you can recast these spells obviously as well. That is exactly the same. High Elf gets Prestidigitation, and it also says you can change that free cantrip from the arcane spell list on a long rest, which is interesting. That's the only one of the lineages that lets you change that cantrip for something different. You also get Detect Magic and Misty Step. Wonderful little spells to be given for free as a race.
Yeah.
And Wood Elf gets 35-foot movement speed, so an extra 5 feet of movement speed. The Druid cantrip, Long Strider, and Pass Without a Trace. not my favorite of the three. Primarily because a long strider seems a little unnecessary. You already have more movement speed, but it's beside the point.
Then we have the Gnomes, which very interesting changes on here again. Consolidating down the subraces to either be some kind of lineage or legacy or
interesting.
That
as a quick little side there, the dwarves did not get a lineage thing with like Hill Dwarf, Mountain Dwarf as the rest of them. They just put them all together and like took parts of both and just said dwarves.
Yeah, because I feel like the base dwarf didn't get a ton of actual usage stuff. Is just like passive kind of things. So with that, they kind of just combined multiple passives and added that little
stone cunning thing. Yeah.
So with the gnomes on here, we have dark vision, of course. Gnomish cunning. You have advantage on intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws.
Period. End of sentence.
There is a part missing from that. So without the against magic on there, it is quite a bit different. So that is a huge impact that could be seen.
Sweet mercy.
Assuming we don't see any major changes to the way monsters work. Because if they do take away some of the way things are worded, then maybe it isn't that big a change, depending on what they do in the future. But if things stay as they are, it is a huge change.
Yeah.
And then, of course, your gnomish lineage. You can choose forest or rock gnome as your lineage. With the forest gnome, you gain the minor illusion cantrip, and you can cast Speak with Animals with the trait. You can cast it number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. Regain all uses when you finish a long rest. And, of course, you can use spell slots you have to cast a spell as well.
Just lots of Speak with Animals.
Yeah,
all the
so
Speak
much
with
animal speak. And they did mention, too, that they wanted to stress that if you learn an ability from a racial, that you can use it with spell slots.
Sure.
Because it feels weird if you have magic
to not be able
to cast it with like this magic, but not your other magic. So it's wanted to make it easier if you are a caster. And also with some of the potential nerfs happening to spellcasters, which check out our rules video on that. And then the other option is the rock gnome. The mending and prestidigitation cantrips.
That's it. That's all you get.
In addition, you go to the next page. You can spend 10 minutes casting prestidigitation to create a tiny clockwork device, such as a toy, fire starter, or music box, which were I believe the original options for the race on there. Mm-hmm. Casting the spell in this way consumes 10 gold worth of raw materials, which you provide during the casting. When you create the device, you determine its function by choosing one effect from prestidigitation. The device produces that effect whenever you or another creature takes a bonus action to touch it to activate it. If the chosen effect has options, you choose one of those options for the device when you create it. For example, if you choose the spell's Ignite Extinguish effect, you determine whether the device ignites or extinguishes fire. The device doesn't do both. You can have 3 such devices in existence at a time, and each one dismantles itself 8 hours after its creation. You can also touch one of your devices and dismantle it as an action. After a device is dismantled, the 10 gold of materials is reclaimed. So that way you're not just burning out 10 gold every day to build stuff, which is nice.
Yes.
So, there's the gnomes for you.
Onto one of the actually more simple ones, because halflings, again, like dwarves, did get condensed down into just halflings. You don't have the stout halflings or any variations. It's just regular. They still have brave. They still have halfling nimbleness, where they can move through creatures of size larger than you. They still have luck, their version of luck, which is when you roll a 1 on a d20 test, you can re-roll the die and must use the new roll. That hasn't changed. But they did get the proficiency and the stealth skill added to them.
Yeah, so comparatively,
I
feel like they got the short end of the stick, no pun intended.
Pun 100% intended.
Yeah.
Because, mechanically, just consider Gnome, for example. Even if we don't talk about ignore the lineages thing altogether, with the bonus spells and all that kind of stuff, and making the cool little clockwork toy. Ignore that altogether. A dark vision. Advantage on intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws.
Yeah, that's...
Advantages on 3 different saving throws. Because halflings, don't have dark vision. They get stealth instead. And they do advantage on, in frightened and all that kind of stuff. Because they did change that wording as well. I need to mention that. Because originally Brave just gave you advantage on saving throw against being frightened.
Sure.
Because now they added it to where it also, if you happen to be frightened, it advantage on ending the condition, which makes sense.
Like the elves.
With the charm. With charm, too. But yeah, I feel like they need the lineages thing to give them something more or give them something else.
Yeah, I mean...
Because the luck thing, if you're not an unlucky person, you may never... Of course, when it hits, it feels real good to be able to say, like, 1, I don't care. Roll it again. Oh, look, a 16.
Yeah. I mean, even with the... I don't know, yeah, I feel like they do need
They need something else. Again, I think
give him some spells. Make
him have the lineages thing.
The Ludus Den Halfling had Druidcraft and like Entangle and Spike Growth. Mm-hmm. So I don't know why they don't just maybe add some other spells for the Stout Halfling.
Yep.
And yeah, I don't know. It feels lacking in comparison to the others, and it does mention it is an Unearthed Arcana. It's not set in stone.
But by far, my biggest critique so far is that halflings are underwhelmed compared to the other options.
Then on here we have the Orc, which, if you're looking at this thing, it's going to look really familiar because this is the same Orc from the recently released Monsters of the Multiverse.
Yes.
So...
It's the exact same Orc.
It's the same.
It's the only one of the races that had 0 changes. The halfling only had very small changes, it said no changes.
I'm not entirely sure why they even included it, honestly, because what's the point of putting it in here?
In a UA, if it's...
I guess the purpose is that it's the first time a full Orc, not a half Orc, has been in
the PHB. Yeah, because it originally was in Volos, was a playable monster race in Volos.
I think it originally was, and then they moved it into...
And they reworked it.
They redid it.
Because I think they took away the negative to intelligence.
There were some. They reworked like kobolds and orcs. And
they took away the
monstrous races. So there's not really much to say about that. It's the same as we've recently seen. Adrenaline Rush, Dark Vision, powerful build, and Relentless Endurance, of course.
Yep.
So, orcs.
Same thing. Then we on to the last one is Tieflings. They still have their Dark Vision. They do have a Fiendish Legacy, which is going to be their lineage as well. And then they have Otherworldly Presence, which gives them the Thaumaturgy cantrip. And that's pretty much the extent of it there. So, the other big thing with them is their 3 different lineages of Abyssal. Can I buy a Val Chthonic and Infernal? And those are tied to, the different evil planes, with Chthonic being neutral evil, Infernal being lawful evil, and Abyssal being chaotic evil. Abyssal is going to give you the poison spray cantrip. I don't know why I can't say the word spray correctly. You're getting Ray of Sickness and then Hold Person. Wonderful. It makes me think with the changes to... Well, no, the Hold Person would stay a level 2 spell. They might even kick Hold Person up a level spell because it feels so good as a level 2 spell to cast, but with the nerfs to concentration and things.
Yeah.
Anyway, different video. The second one is Chthonic. Again, I'd like to buy a Val. It's Chthonic. It gives you the Chill Touch cantrip, False Life, and Ray of Enfeeblement are the 3 spells you get. And finally, with Infernal, it is the Firebolt cantrip, Hellish Rebuke, and Darkness. All very much, nasty, evil, no good, very bad things to be doing to people. Again, specifically my personal favorite level 2 spell in existence, the Abyssal's getting Whole Person, just seems wonderful.
Yeah. So those are the race changes, options, updates for this Unearthed Arcana at the very least. So the question, I guess, on here, first of all, is this the plan for all of the base races in the new player's handbook? Do we think that this is what it's going to stay at, just these?
Yeah.
Which, this is pretty much everything plus Orc, which, you're losing half-elves, you're losing half-orcs.
Yeah.
I think that's everything that's in the original PHB. And one of the things that's awkward, too, is the rules for half races.
Yeah.
They mention on here is that you pick 2 parents, but you can change the aesthetic of your character, but the mechanics, you pick one or the other. Mm-hmm. Versus half-elves, half-orcs had unique kind of mechanics.
Yeah.
It seems like they're not going to do that, which is a little weird.
Yeah.
I wish that they would have some kind of way to mix and match. Maybe you have kind of... I guess the thought I had is when you multi-class, you have a table, like you have to have these prerequisites or, you have to pick these things or whatever to do that. And some things carry over and some things don't, depending.
Yeah.
What if they did a table like that for races?
Yeah.
Where, if you want to do a half race, you can only, gain this ability.
Yeah.
Or you gain Dark Vision or you don't, or whatever.
Yeah.
So maybe if they did some kind of table like that, but to not have any mixed races with mechanical changes, it just seems kind of weird to take a step backwards in that way.
Yeah, it does.
Versus forward. I'm not crazy about that.
And again, the rest of it is, I think the halflings need a little extra help compared to others, especially when you look at the other small guy of the gnome and how wonderful it is to have advantage in 3 saving throws and not just against magic. I don't know if that was a mistake, if that was done intentionally, or like Jameson said, if that means they're looking to maybe change the way
I feel
some
like
wording and effects of spells and other monster abilities and things like that.
That's the other thing I want to comment on is they want us to do a feedback playtest of this stuff, but I feel like, especially in our rules video that we did, talking about the way inspiration and D20s and critical hits are all kind of tied together so tightly, is I feel like there's other pieces of the puzzle missing.
Yeah.
So to give feedback on these things without knowing what the grand scheme of things is going to be is going to be really difficult, because I feel like the reason they would make those changes is because they're maybe looking at changing monsters or changing the way saves work to some extent, or magic, how it's defined, and things like that with abilities. So it's a little strange on there, but I guess we'll see in the future, because they're going to be doing these a lot.
Absolutely.
Sounds like.
And to kind of close out the thing, kind of quickly go over backgrounds, because they're kind of tied to the hip of races the way they've done it. And again, as a reminder, all of your stat increases are now coming from your background instead of your race. But
to be fair, it doesn't matter, because
when
you make your character, you have a background and a race. It doesn't matter where the stats come from, where the abilities come from. You just have your character.
Their reasoning is more from like a character creation, like lore, fantasy, your stat. It makes more sense.
Yes, logically it makes more sense.
Your stats to come there based on what you spend your time doing, not the race you were born as.
Right. And I will actually make one other side note really quickly, is with the tiefling and the human, you can actually choose to be small as well, which is new. That is new.
That's correct. Yeah, for sake of mechanics that mess with your size and things, moving through spaces or grappling. That there is a mechanical choice to that. It's not just a
especially with
a flavor thing,
which could be a detriment to you if you want to grapple.
Right. But obviously the biggest change backgrounds besides the stat thing, the passive thing there, 2 major changes, is they are completely customizable if you so choose them to be. They still have the almost all, if not all, of the original backgrounds from the PHB are in here as samples.
Right.
If you're not comfortable doing the whole custom build thing, basically it's you're going to get 2 ability score improvements in one stat and one in another, or you can do 1 in 3 different stats, like your Triton race would used to do. You're going to get 2 skill proficiencies. You're going to get a tool proficiency. You're going to get a language. And then finally, here's the other major change. You're going to get a level 1, very specific, level 1 feat. There are 10 of them listed in this UA. We don't know if that's all of them. We don't know if that's half of them. If that's a 10th of them. Lord, I hope it's not a 10th of them. Like, all of them or half would be fine. Is that, these are level 1s. Like, there's no prerequisite, which is one of the most difficult words to say, that and prestidigitation out of the Dungeons and Dragons. Prerequisite. Which obviously implies that there are going to be other feats that aren't listed in here. I mean, obviously things like Warcaster, Sentinel, Great Weapon Master, things like that I know from PHB aren't here. They're either going to be reworking those or just be putting them behind a higher level cap.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if
Sharpshooter,
like Sentinel, gets a higher level, because the whole
Warcaster.
Yeah, there's some wombo combos that can be done with some of the feats.
But so everything is customizable. You can pick which ability scores you want, and again, it allows you to pick whatever flavor feature you want. Like if you really wanted to have the artisan thing, so you've got a background in dealing with like artisan tools of a particular time. You're master jewel crafter, or at least been in training to become a master jewel crafter, but you're good with your hands because you're a rogue. You're used to working with finite things. So you want buff to your dexterity and your constitution instead of your intelligence and charisma. You can do that. You're not beholden to the stats of what the book says and artisan stats are.
Right.
They're just examples. So that's great, and it lets you. It takes away the limitation and hindrance of like, well, I really want to play a master jewel crafter for my character, but I really don't want intelligence and charisma. I'm a barbarian.
Right.
So
it gives you more.
Again, and that's. But And that's, I feel like a lot of the steps they're trying to take are giving you the freedom to play the character you want to play, so that we always encourage here. Play what you want to play, don't play what's necessarily best. I feel like a lot of the choices they're making, decisions they're making with this, comes to trying to make things more of an even play field. Play what you want to play, not what's necessarily the best, most optimized, any of that kind of thing. Because it's obvious they're trying to do that by leveling out the costs of tools, leveling out the cost, the gold cost of equipment. Musical instruments are all the same. Like the gold value you're starting with your background is the same. It's not, well, I'm going to be a noble to make sure I have some more gold versus the whatever, a cultist, I don't care what. They may only have 5 gold pieces to their name. So that way you're not stuck behind that. Because granted, some DMs aren't super stringent about gold cost and spell materials, things like that. But DMs that are, which is fine. There's no right or wrong way there. It's one of the great things about D&D. For those that are very specific about making sure you keep track of your gold, your spell components, all that kind of stuff, you're not behind the 8 ball because you're what you wanted to play.
Right. It's just giving a lot more agency to the players to make what they want to do with customization. And I believe even the PHB originally had the option to create your own background. But I think the reason a lot of people didn't do that is because the feats would have unique abilities.
Yeah.
So if you picked your own background, if you made your own background, you wouldn't know how to make like a balanced ability that goes with it versus someone like the guild master or a guild artisan, for example, background. You had bonuses for working with like crafters guilds and stuff like that. They'd recognize you or whatever when you go to towns. You wouldn't necessarily know what to add. But with this, now you have more options they want to make the customization the forefront, and then they have templates in case you're lazy or you're not creative or you just want a quick build. So they want to have those for the players that maybe don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of stuff, but also have the option and put the focus on making your own customizable class on here. So that's the major stuff with the backgrounds. Oh, and one other note too they put is if you are wanting to do the backwards compatibility, this is going to be the thing that's really weird with this edition, is because they're making so many changes. I mean, all the adventures are still going to work perfectly fine, but it's going to be the old rules plus new rules, how those are going to mesh.
Yeah, it's going to be a big question, without a doubt.
And one of the things that they really did mention on here too, which is easy to overlook, honestly, is if you're like, oh, I'm gonna break this. I'm gonna take an old race and new background, so I get ability score times 2. Yeah, you can't do that. It says in here, if you gain ability scores from one thing, you can't gain it from the other. Yeah, which. Come on, don't be that guy. Don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy.
But yeah, so they do have that little box in there as well to specify that. But I think a lot of this too is just going to come down to, again, we don't have the full picture of what they're looking to do, which is going to make it really hard to gauge how things are going to be from a balance perspective. Yep. So I think we can clap it there. But we got lots of thoughts about the feats and the way those are going to work, and also go over the details of those. So make sure you check those out. We have our rules video, and then of course the overview video for just a general broad look at everything. Yep. As well. Thanks to our sponsors, Hit Point Press. Check out their big bad bundles. Unique, cool monsters, history, lore, everything you need to throw these villains into your campaigns.
And it's a great way to get around your players that like to metagame, or if they do it accidentally, like I tend to do at times. Maybe they think they know what this monster is by the description. They can create some fun opportunities and unique things to throw at even your most experienced players would not see coming.
So check out the link in the description down below. So stay tuned, guys. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications so you know when all of our new videos are coming out. And as always, thanks for watching.